Welcome to the Rant Live.
Welcome to the Rant, everybody. Live at night. We're doing a nighttime version. So, and Evan is scary.
I'm Bain. Get it? Like from Batman. I'm Bain. If you are, you probably hear it. If you're not watching this live, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But I actually, just because of our guest, I went on to Etsy and I bought a cosplay Bain mask for just to wear it for about 30 seconds here at the beginning. I did not anticipate how uncomfortable it would be with the beard, because now I have like whiskers in my mouth as I'm talking. It's awesome. But you know, it's a hell of a lot of fun. And it'll be cool later. Like, this is a person who I bought a Venom mask a few years ago, just to wear, like, not for Halloween. I saw it and I was like, oh, I want this Venom mask. So, anyway.
And in case you missed it, we actually have Max Bain on the show today. We're going to bring him on in. Max, I hope Evan's not scaring you too much over there with that thing he's got going on.
Not at all. Evan, I appreciate the effort. I love it. I appreciate you guys having me on again. Thank you for accommodating me, audibling to the night show. I'm glad to be here, man. Thank you guys for having me on.
Dude, you got the setup going there. Are you podcasting? I mean, what's going on there? You got a nice mic set up. It looks good.
Oh yeah, you got to do things right now. So in doing my own podcast, the Bain campaign, which you can check out on all streaming platforms, in doing that, sunk the money in, got a good mic. It took me about 3 attempts. I had a good one to start. It crapped out after 2 episodes. And then I bought another one that sounded like I was just yelling into, like I was just didn't sound good at all. And then finally we struck gold with this 3rd one, and it's still going strong. So just want to do things right, have some quality sound. So I think we're getting there so far, though.
Nice. Good job.
And how, just for those who haven't been listening or who don't really know and I know, because I think the cool thing about your podcast is that, and I don't want to speak too much for it, but I know you're trying to shine a lot of light on kind of what's the day-to-day life like for a minor league ball player, and a lot of the different things that go on outside of just baseball stuff. But can you talk a little bit about the kind of the driving force of the pod and what that's all about?
Yeah, of course. And I think you bring up a good point in terms of shining light on the day-to-day process, because I know that's something that I would have loved to have when I was in high school, or if I was in college. Like, I would have liked to have known about those things, or had somebody that's gone through it share their experiences before I was put into that situation. Because there is a big learning curve that comes with actually doing it. Not that we're trying to eliminate that curve, but it certainly helps if you have some sort of expectation going in. But I think the larger part of it is the humanity within our community, because when the large majority of fans go to a game, they see the player on the field and they're judging who he is based off of how he acts or how he performs on the field, but they don't know the backstory of like what's actually happening. So, one of the first interviews we had, Aiden McIntyre of the Oakland A's brought up that point where, you see a third baseman that makes 2 bad throws in a game, but you don't know if he's sleeping on a kitchen floor at night. And that's kind of more of the side that I want to show, is just the grind that it is, both physically and mentally, to play this type of schedule and do it consistently.
So what, and that's one of the things. It was kind of neat, and it's funny. Like, over the last few days, there've been a lot of weird parallels, because like we just had a week ago, we had Ethan Roberts on, and you talk about humanity. Like, during the entire interview, he's holding his infant daughter there. And we were talking about what happened, because I mean, his wife went into labor and gave birth early, and he's sitting there like talking about, hey, coach, can I have my cell with me out in the bullpen, because my wife's about to go into labor. I need to know if I got to go home. And so you're thinking about all these things. It's like, you talk about somebody trying to pitch like with their mind somewhere else, right? And that's the kind of thing, like, oh man, this guy sucks, he just gave up a homer. And then he's like, yeah, but in the back of his mind, he's like, my wife might be going into labor. I got to go back, and it's things like that. And then to see him, here he is, like, he's holding his daughter, he's about to go give a pitching lesson, And then he's got his workouts. Like there's all these things that stack up that all we see is maybe, you know, for someone like yourself who's a starter, we're going to get a larger sample when you get out there. But another guy, we might only see him face one batter or two batters. And that's such a small sample to try to take an example away from that you don't know anything else about him. So I just think that's super cool. But I also appreciate it because not only were the two of you ranked immediately together in the new Fangraphs prospect rankings that came up, but I know you jumped in, and I appreciate you coming on here with the torn labrum after that deadlift. No, I kid, but you guys are both in there, and it's so funny because and you and I were discussing this earlier, but I had just seen something like a week ago or 10 days ago or so, and somebody was like, the worst possible move for a pitcher, the most detrimental thing for pitchers is to do deadlifts. And then I see Manny Rodriguez just like muscle hamster, you know, just absolutely going ham on the deadlift bar. And then Ethan, who is like $180 soaking wet, is doing, and then you're on there repping out like over 500 pounds. And so I'm like, I just thought that was funny, but I did want to ask you about, and I don't want to necessarily shame anyone too badly, at least for
although we can if you want.
we can do any of that for bad opinions, but you know, as we were talking about, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I mean, what are some of the things that maybe, and I know you've been on record, we talked about that, about saying, hey, I had to forget everything I knew about pitching and relearn it all. What are some things like over the last 2 years that you've either adopted freshly or that you've said, wow, what I used to think was completely stupid, now I'm off in this other direction? Like, what are some of those things that you think are misconceptions that people have out there about, you know, working out and pitching?
Yeah.
Kind of a big question.
Yeah, for sure. I guess first I want to start with, you know, I know I kind of went back at that guy on Twitter today that had commented about the deadlift leading to a torn labrum, which I'm not exactly sure of the science behind that. I don't know that it's there. But I typically won't do that if it's a performance-based negative tweet, right? If it's something like, wow, this guy walked 6 today and gave up 2 bombs, like I'm gonna be like, yeah, I did that. Like, you know, like that's kind of who I am. But it, you know, the line for me is kind of drawn where when we start predicting injuries, that's kind of where I'm like, all right, maybe it's time maybe it's time for me to say something. So I don't like to go out and be negative on Twitter. I only like to put positive stuff out there. But when there's a time for it, obviously you gotta step in and say something. So, but as for, you know, what I've learned over the last 2 years, you know, coming out of college, I think I was afraid of, I didn't love the weight room like I do now. I didn't love throwing hard like I do now. Before I kind of started this huge overhaul in my process, I was like anti-driveline. I was like, all right, well, all these dudes are going to throw hard now, so I'm going to do the exact opposite. And I'm going to be Kyle Hendricks, and I'm going to throw 88 with a good changeup, and that's going to be my way into pro ball. And I think I only said that because it was like a safe way out, right? I had already achieved what I needed to achieve physically in order to get where I wanted to go. I think I was afraid of, oh, mate, like how good can I actually be, or how hard can I actually throw? And I think once I made that change and kind of just like didn't look back and sold out for this entire development process, I couldn't be more grateful for it. And it's only evolving, right? You can think something's right at one point, and then, you know, 3 months later, it doesn't appear to be like, you know, you have a change of heart, or you read something that maybe proves the contrary, or like, you know, it just kind of happens as you go. So I guess the biggest thing was me changing from anti-drive line to like, yeah, let me just throw the piss out of the baseball and let's see what happens.
Which is, yeah, and it's so funny because and there's you know, all kinds of different schools of thought that are out there. But I know one of the things that I've heard, like Scott Kobos was out there when I was talking to him out in South Bend. He was like, you know, I needed to clean some things up. And I got to the point where I was just doing like 40 pull downs just to move as fast as possible and let my body figure its way through. And we've done a lot of work with Tom House. And I know he and Driveline don't line up on everything, but his whole mantra is GFF, is go freaking fast. Because if you go fast, your body's going to get to where it needs to go, and you kind of need to learn. And I think it's similar to what you said. It's if mentally, if you're kind of holding yourself back a little bit, like, I don't know, you're never going to know what you can achieve. But it's really cool to see that and to see some of those things come about. But I do think like a lot of people have reservations, because for whatever reason, I mean, I remember a story Rick Sutcliffe told about like Don Zimmer saw him doing bicep curls, with a bar in the weight room one time. And Zimmer was like, if I ever catch you lifting weights again, you're cut. This is Rick Sutcliffe, but like, that's not that long ago, 35 years ago, 30 years ago, like pitchers didn't lift and you can see it. Like if you look at Sut, like, man, I wonder what he could have been if he was in a little bit better shape, but we'll see. So what's obviously you're doing a little working out. You're out there at the complex. What is this period? Are you focused strictly on trying to build your body up, trying to get stronger? Are you staying off the mound? Is that still a part of it, or what's kind of the timeline of your off season here?
Good question. So, I think right now I'm primarily focused with the weight room and just trying to build a better foundation going into next year. And the purpose behind that is to improve the floor velocity. Going into this past year, it was a very big goal of mine to hit 100. And I damn near did it at spring training. I was 0.2 off, and that 0.2 will haunt me forever. But I don't know that that's necessarily a primary goal this winter. I've went out and I've proved some things that maybe people didn't think I was capable of doing. And that would be, I mean, the leading thing being that I stayed healthy throughout this past year. First time on this kind of schedule for a full summer. And I was able to make every start that I was asked to make, which is I take a lot of pride in that. That's really cool for me. But in that being said, I want to improve the foundation so that the floor velocity is better. There were times where I can go get you 97, 98 in the first, second, third inning. But seeing those velocities kind of tick down towards the fifth and sixth inning was a little disappointing. If I'm being genuinely honest, I don't love seeing like 92s in the sixth. That's not my favorite thing in the world. So, if we can improve that to a 94, 95 or even 93, 94, I'll be pretty happy just so the stuff has consistency throughout the duration of a start and then subsequently the duration of a season.
And how much of that, right? So I despite the fact that I was joking about it, obviously, I mean, deadlifts or other Olympic lifts like that, right? Especially if you're looking at some of the compound lifts that work a bunch of different muscle groups together. You talk about, I mean, back in the day, Roger Clemens may have had some additional help, but like Roger Clemens had a giant backside, right? And his legs were tree trunks. And I mean, that was, and he could keep that up because, and Nolan Ryan would say the same thing. It's not about how strong your arm is. It's the body that's delivering that arm through there. I mean, how much of your focus is lower body? Do you have a specific split you're looking for? Is it primarily trying to build up the strength in your trunk, or what does that come from?
I think it all works. I think it all works in phases with the throwing. It kind of starts there. You're allowed to, during this kind of on-ramping phase, we'll call that, where the throwing isn't as high intent and high volume. You're allowed to go after a little bit more in the weight room. And I kind of stick to the as far as lower half go, I can't load up really anything backloaded, or posterior loaded would be the scientific way of saying it, right? I can't really load up much back there just because of the already present scoliosis that I have. I don't really want to mess with that anymore. But it's something that's pretty safe within deadlift, which is great. You and I talked about this earlier, how great it is for ground force production. And the deadlift is a lift that's executed out of the hinge to begin with, which is where pitchers operate from. Every time you see a pitcher load into the backside, right, they sink into their back leg. That's the hinge position. So the more force that we're able to generate out of the hinge, I mean, generally speaking, the harder we're going to be able to throw. So, and there are cutoff points, there are movement deficiencies that take away from that. There's all sorts of other variables, but that's a very key indicator in terms of overall velocity generation. So, the deadlift is a big one for me. And then everything else that I do, whether it be, split squat, reverse lunge, step up, all that fun stuff is going to be anterior loaded. So on my front side. And I do that because, one, I can't do it on my back and I'm still going to get it in, and I can still load up a fair amount of weight on the front, even though it's not as much as the back. But it keeps the core engaged the entire time. It's something that I can't like turn off while I have the weight on my front side. So activating the lower half as well as activating the core and kind of building that endurance in there is big for me as well.
Now, when you're doing the split squats, are you exploding out of the lower position into it, or are you keeping a more just keeping the tension and keeping the movement precise throughout? Because I've seen it done both ways. I know a lot of people like to pop out of it to kind of simulate that front leg blocking and kind of get a little bit of that hyperextension in that lead leg as they're going through. Do you have a specific technique for that you prefer?
I think it all depends on the phase too, because if I'm in a strength phase, it's not going to be something where I'm going to want to explode out of it. I'm going to want to load that weight up, and it's going to take me a little bit more time. But if I'm in a VBT phase or velocity-based training, if I'm in a velocity-based training phase, then yeah, I'm going to want to try to move that bar as fast as I can, which is going to require me to use a little bit less weight. But the goal or the thought process is that the more explosive you can move more weight, the better. So it really just depends on what kind of phase you're in the weight room and how that lines up with your throwing.
Cool. And I mean, obviously, I'm sure the number kind of fluctuates, but how many guys are out there at the complex right now getting their work in?
Ooh, I would say anywhere from 75 to 100.
Okay,
I think that's pretty safe bet.
Are you guys just primarily in the weight room, or are you guys getting out on the field at all?
We're throwing a little bit, but it's not anything super regimented. It's your daily stretch. You'll go up and do plyos. You finish up your throwing, or you go through and finish up your throwing day. Usually takes me about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, and then I go in the weight room for however long that lasts, whether it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. So, and then you're eating breakfast and lunch at the facility as well. So usually you're there from 8:15 to 1 o'clock, 1:30, I think.
Okay. And for those, for the younger pitchers that might be out there, or parents or coaches that might be listening to this, and obviously I know you had mentioned you're doing your arm care and your throwing routines prior to work, because obviously you don't want to work your muscles to fatigue and then try to go out there and throw. Is that would that be? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just want to from a professional pitcher to maybe some of those folks who are working with their kids and who are getting to that point where my son just turned 13, so he could go join the gym, and we're always careful to make sure it's like if he's going to hit or pitch, I want him to do that before we go lift weights. But do you have is that a routine that you would prescribe, or do you have some other thoughts on that?
Generally speaking, I would say lifting should come after the primary focus of the day, whether it be hitting, pitching, defensive work, whatever it may be. However, that being said, during the summer, when you're traveling on the road and whatnot, typically your weight room slot at the opposing team's stadium is going to be in the morning. And that's like, you can't get your bullpen in before then. So you're going to have to lift before you throw that day. So there is something to, during the season, there became something for me that told me, okay, if I do this right, and if I stress and recover and adapt to this correctly, I can consistently lift before I throw, and my body will be prepared for it. But it's not something where you're like, oh, I'm going to do this, and then you go max out squat and then try to throw. It's like, you kind of work into it, and then, kind of go from there. But ultimately your body will adapt to it. So whatever your circumstances are, there is a solution. But how I started, I would generally say after, but if you can only fit it in before, then allow your body to adjust to that and then get after it.
Sweet. So one of the things, and this is, I found this interesting, or not even so much interesting, but it's something I do want to ask you about. And I know you've talked, so you just talked about adapting and earlier about just kind of learning the ropes of life in affiliated baseball over a longer season and trying to figure that out. And I think, anyone who would look, and again, this is something we've talked about, right? And this is something you've been very open about. Your numbers were not necessarily consistent over the course of the season, right? If we could break them down into months or whatever, we could look at July, but then, and we could look at and say,
we could also not look at July too,
right? We can not look, or we can look at August. I think,
that'd be great.
Yeah. When you were the Cubs minor league pitcher of the month in August, and I actually saw that announcement while I was at an Iowa Cubs game, which is kind of fun. They were here in Indy. And, but I know that comes up and down. And again, one of the things we discussed was, and you just said it right now, obviously we don't want to dig into that, and I won't, but was there ever a point, as you're going through those struggles? And I know there are certain times when you must've just been beating your head against the wall, wondering, what the hell do I have to do? to get this right, and then things kind of fall into place. So what was that? We don't need to necessarily get into specifics, but was there a point when you were just like, dude, I can't figure this out? Like, what is happening? And then how did, obviously it did change, but how were you able to kind of recover from that, I guess, and turn things around then in the next month?
Yeah. So actually, I kind of got a funny story about this. During July, which is probably the worst stretch of baseball that I've played in a long time. There was a start where I gave up, I want to say I gave up like 4 in 3 innings against Cedar Rapids. I gave up 3 in the first, scoreless, kind of struggled through the second. And then in the third inning, I got the 2 outs. I was about to get out of the third inning with no runs, right? Bounce back 2-0 after giving up the 3 spot in the first. I get one of their better hitters. I think it was their 5-hitter catcher. I can't remember his last name. It was Camargo. I think his last name was Camargo. I get Camargo to 2 strikes. I've got him to chase the slider twice, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go with what works. I'm just going to throw the slider again. Except this time I threw the slider right down the middle, and he decided to put it over our center field fence, which if you've been to South Bend is no easy feat. So that was the end. That was the end of my day. And I remember my parents being there, and this is towards the back end of the month. I remember my parents being there, and I go up to my dad and I'm like, I mean, statistically speaking, this has to change at some point, right? Like we have to regress back to the mean at some point, right? Like this is not the new norm. This can't be. And he just kind of laughed at me, and he's like, you just got to keep going, trust the process, keep, sticking to what you do. And, I was fortunate enough, at the time I didn't really want it, but I was fortunate enough at the end of July to spend 10 days on our development list. And all that allowed me to do was kind of remove myself from the game, give myself a little bit of extra time to put that month in the rearview mirror, and move forward. And it genuinely helped, mentally, physically. It was really good stuff. And we just kind of had a little bit of an adjustment in terms of an attack plan. And that was just to trust the fastball. I was very, I really respected hitters throughout the first half of the season. Sorry. And basically what I noticed was every time that I was starting to consistently give up, hard contact with fastball, I just abandoned it, right? I just start flipping everything else and just see what I can do. And I had to make that adjustment and know that the fastball still plays, even if it does get hit a couple times. I'm not going to be perfect every time I go out there. But it was, overall throughout the entire first season, it was just a learning experience of just going in and throwing as hard as I can to actually pitching, because there's no way for me to sustain that 100% that I was showing during spring training for 6 months. It's not possible. It can be in the tank, but in order to have that consistent product, maybe you idle at 90% instead of 95 or instead of 100, or maybe it's 95%, it was just year one was a very big learning year. And I think we start to see the results of that in August.
Yeah, I mean, the contrast between just looking at July and August is it's incredible. I mean, you must have felt night and day between how you felt in July and then how you felt in August with, we could go down the numbers, but we lost Evan for a second. We go down the numbers up and down the board, but I mean, overall, it was just incredible. You had, I won't say what your ERA was in July, but it was over 10.
It was, I think it was over 11, wasn't it?
It was over
11.
It was 11.34. The record show.
I had to correct you. I had to correct you, John. I had to make sure we got it right.
But in August, it was 2.96, which is just, I mean, that type of turnaround you just don't see very often. A month like that could really, bring someone down. How did you mentally recover from that? And so much so that you were able to excel in such a manner.
I think the timing of our schedule kind of worked out. And like I said, with the development list, I was kind of given that extra 5 days to leave that last month, previous few starts behind. But I kind of saw the light at the end of the tunnel in that last start before the dev list. We go back to Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Brewers affiliate, who had already had success again, quite a bit of success against early in the year. So I knew I had some sort of a good hold on the game plan. And I did execute it for 4 innings. If you look at the first 4 innings of that start versus the fifth and sixth, actually, if you look at the first 4 starts versus first 4 innings versus the last 2, you see a very different product, like you talk about July versus August. Okay, so I start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I start to see that I can log outs consistently, and I'm still capable of doing it. So knowing that and taking the good from that outing, the schedule timing worked out to where my first start back off the development list was against the Peoria Chiefs, who are the St. Louis Cardinals affiliate. And minor league baseball is very year to year in terms of which teams are having success and which teams aren't. Especially in the win-loss column, but Peoria had been one of the weaker teams within the High A Central this year. And knowing that kind of going in, it was very easy for me to be like, all right, these are their 2 or 3 guys, and I'm just going to crush it with a fastball and see what we got. And I ended up going, I think I went 3 innings with no hits, 6 Ks. It was very, with a limited pitch count. So it's a very nice reintroduction back to the game. And just kind of gave me that little taste of success to know that I was still capable of doing it. And there was a lot of growth in the month of August in itself. So, and I've talked about that in a couple other podcasts. So, but yeah, man, just being able to leave it behind, having that last start in the month of July, I think was big going into that month, especially with the first start.
And you mentioned the Brewers affiliate, which would be the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers, and I do recall you having some success against them in a game on a scorchingly hot Friday night in June. I believe it's June 12th, also known as Opening Day 2.0 at Wrigley Field. And the Cubs had this tremendous come from behind win. And then you went out and struck out 10 batters over the course of a start. Fairly good, I would say. I think it looked fairly good. The game was marred by some terrible singing. I will not mention who did any singing, but that was, I'm sure that was a pretty cool. It was pretty cool, and it was me. My family led the 7th inning stretch in that game, and so we got to see you pitch, and from right there behind home plate, it was great because one dude lost his bat. I think it was on a changeup that he got fooled on. Yeah, just chucked the bat on a and it was great because I have video of it somewhere because I was recording at the time, and you just see him. And just it looked like everything was working early on, and I know so the change in particular I know is something that you had mentioned that you've been working on. How long was that pitch being crafted behind the scenes before you started unleashing that in games?
I started throwing that changeup in 2019, December of 2019, before I signed. And it took me probably a good 10 months, maybe eight months before I threw it 60 feet. The first 8 months, I couldn't help but throw that thing about 45 feet. I was hitting the Rapsodo with it. I thought it was never going to come along, but I knew in order for it to come along, I was going to have to continue throwing it. And then I, started messing with it more and more in catch play, and I started to figure out, healthy release points, how the feeling off the ball kind of worked with the pitch, and Wisconsin. That first time against Wisconsin was pretty special. I had never had that much success with the changeup before, but I had been telling Peyton Remy, I think he was promoted a little bit before that start, but I had been telling him that there was going to be a game where I'm going to throw 25 changeups and I'm just going to kind of see what happens. And that was the perfect lineup to do it against. So going in, they had 3 left-handed hitters, they had 2 right-handed hitters, and they had 4 switch hitters. Okay. So for me, that means they have 7 lefties and they have 2 righties. I was like, this is perfect. I can miss arm side all day. Let's see what happens. And I ended up having a great game with it. And part of that was that the scouting report that they had probably didn't reflect a ton of changeup usage, which I used to my advantage. But the other part is that the pitch was actually shaping how I wanted it to. I was throwing it for strikes. I was getting chases. I was tunneling it well with the fastball, and that kind of propelled that pitch's development throughout the entire summer. And I got to the point where one of the things I said prior to the year was that I really wanted to work on the ability to throw that right on right. And I was able to do that. I was lucky enough to have 2 starts against Peoria in that month of August. In my second start against them, in the 5th inning, it was kind of one of those things where I was like, it was during that kind of 6-week stretch in the Midwest where it was like 95 degrees every day with 95% humidity.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible. So what happens is that your fingers get really, really wet and the ball end up getting wet. And when you try to dry your hands off, everything else is wet. So I literally couldn't grip my curveball this day. I could not grip my curveball against Peoria. I was not going to throw it for a strike. It just product of the environment. So it got to the point in the 5th inning where I'm leaving a puddle of sweat on the mound. And I was like, you know what? This is the last thing I have. I can't be all fastball slider. So I'm going to, I went, they had one of their better prospects at the plate, Jordan Walker, and I got him in an 0-1 count with a fastball in. And I was like, this is a perfect time for me to try this. And sure enough, like it just kind of started working. And I think I ended up throwing about 5 of them that game and really saw nothing but good results.
And so I should have had you bring a ball on here. What's the changeup grip look like? Are you able to show it? If you?
I think if you give me 2 seconds, I think I can find a baseball.
Cool.
Yeah.
I
would think so. Yeah, I've got one right here. I'm not even.
Here, just throw it. He's there in Phoenix. You can just. Wow.
Yeah, I think it might rain here tomorrow. I don't know what's going on. So that's like snow to people in Arizona. Rain.
What's rain?
Snow. Yeah, and cold.
Rain is like snow. Well,
rain is like snow.
All right, let's do this. I got one.
All right.
So, traditionally speaking, your changeups are going to be like your circle is right here, right? We're making the circle with our pointer and the thumb. I tried this. Really, what it ended up happening was that it turned into a BP fastball, and I would just kill my intent to create that velocity separation, which is just not good, right? Not ideal. The last time I really threw the circle change was at Northwood. So the one that I was taught by my buddy Alex Velasek, who at the time was working at Driveline, moved on to Abilene Christian. He's now at a junior college out in California. Is this Vulcan change, and really. For most pitchers who don't have the feel for a changeup, this is going to be like the last stop before a splitter. And what it looks like is it's right here. Okay, so instead of wedging it, your typical splitter is going to be wedged right here. All we're doing is we're moving that over between the middle and that ring finger on the right side. So I do that, and then I started with my thumb under the ball here. I'm trying to work with my camera. I started with my thumb under the ball here, and I actually found that it worked better if I actually kind of created that circle that I talked about with that first grip. So in a way, it's kind of like a Vulcan circle, I guess. I don't really know, but it works, so I'm good with it.
With a name like Max Bain, I mean, throwing a Vulcan change really makes sense. I think it's right in your alley.
Yeah, I mean, so basically with this pitch, with the changeup, for most people, obviously a guy like Devin Williams is able to throw a changeup with a crazy spin rate because he's able to generate a crazy spin direction that's more screwball-esque than anything. It's kind of a pitch in its own classification. It's not really something that a lot of the guys can throw. So for us normal people, what this grip does is it kills your ability to generate spin rate, and that's a really good thing for the changeup because the way it's going to spin, it's still going to have like a fastball profile to it, which means that if we're thinking spin direction on a clock, okay, so your backspin fastball, your perfect backspin fastball is going to be 12 o'clock, perfect topspin curveball is going to be 6, right-handed slider is going to be 9 o'clock. Right-handed changeup is going to be 3 o'clock. So if you can picture that screwball is going to be in like that 3:30 to 4 o'clock range. Okay, that's why more spin is going to equal more depth. Now, for me, when I say the spin direction is north of 3 o'clock, it's typically in like that 150 to 210 range, which is actually really good for a changeup, even though it's still, conceptually speaking, it's still going to have like a vertical component to it. But the ability to kill spin allows gravity to create that depth. So you're generating a ton of arm side run, and gravity's creating that depth for you, and you're not going to be able to throw this 90 miles an hour. It's just not going to happen. So, and those three factors kind of all combined, you create that Vulcan changeup.
Now so I know like with Williams in particular, and what's wild, and that's where it's like free. Like I almost hurt my shoulder trying, like, not that I was able to throw the airbender, but I mean, he pronates so heavily, and he talked about that. Like he would do that when he was younger and just like come across, like it's just wild. And most people, and he would show it. And if you see it happening, it's like it looks wrong to watch it, to think about how much. But are you like, do you have a mental cue of, you're trying to get a release off the fingers, you're trying to put more pressure on one or the other, you're trying to pronate a certain way, or do you just kind of grip it and rip it and let the grip itself handle killing the velo?
I think one of the great things about that grip is that I can just grip it and rip it. As a guy who really couldn't feel a changeup for most of his career, it was one of those things where if I was going to throw it, I was going to have to throw it with everything I had. So, and being able to do that, it just kind of worked perfectly together in terms of that overall development.
And I know another one. So you mentioned earlier about the slider with Camargo, and obviously that one in particular didn't have a great result. But I know that the slider itself is another pitch, though, that you're still, I think, you'd probably say is not all the way there yet in terms of where you want it to be in terms of like really being a fully formed pitch. But I mean, do you think that's kind of is that the next phase? Is that something you're aiming at really perfecting or getting better anyway? I don't think it'll ever be, no pitch is ever really, truly perfect, but is that like on the top of the list in terms of improvements to make for next year, or where would that sit?
Yeah, I think it's more so the consistency of the shape. It was something where, when I started throwing this, and mind you, I really started throwing this in the middle of the season. I started to feel this slider grip week 2 in Beloit, Wisconsin. So I spent the entire year trying to develop this pitch. And what ended up happening was, I'm going to have to scoot over so I can use my arm. What ended up happening was, in order to kind of shape, I wanted to get the sweep on it, right? So I wanted that sizable break. I didn't really want that short kind of biting straight down slider, that bullet slider it's often referred to as. I wanted more of a large break that was going to separate from the curveball. In my eyes, if I had that bullet spin slider that was moving here, that was going to be something that didn't really pair well with the curveball. So in trying to generate that lateral sweep, I'm a guy that's going to throw from like right about here, that higher 3/4 slot. I'm not all the way over the top, but I'm not quite to the side. I'm going to be throwing from like right about here. Okay. So in creating that slider, one of the things that I saw was happening was I was trying to create this spin right here, that 9 o'clock spin that I'm telling you about, right? So if I'm gripping the ball here, I'm trying to spin the ball right here. Okay. So it's breaking across the zone. One of the things that was happening was I was getting so far on the side of the ball that the slot was actually dropping. Okay. So I was really trying to be conscious in shaping that pitch. And that was one of the other big things in the month of August as well, was that I actually started throwing that from the normal slot. And yeah, it wasn't as straight across as it was when I was dropping the side, but it wasn't like it was killing that break so much that it wasn't the slider that I had imagined. It was still very much a true sweeping slider that was paired with what you would call a spike curve that's kind of got that 12-6 movement, and a fastball that rides up in the zone, and a changeup that moves, arm side and with depth. So just being able to kind of standardize and get more consistency on the shape of that pitch and throw it from my true slot, if you will, I think was the biggest, one of the bigger things leading into the month of August, and obviously will be going into next year as well.
Nice. And what's the curveball grip look like then? I know you just mentioned the spike curve. Is that you throwing it with the like my son's been experimenting with some things, so I'm always interested to see what those look like.
Yeah. So mine right here. So I started with this right here, just pulling down with that entire seam with this finger. But one of the things I opted to, in order to throw to like just to get a little bit more on it, I actually started shifting the seam down a little bit. So I was ultimately like leveraging the seam with only my fingertip instead of the entire finger. Okay. So I'll move here, and then this kind of just rests on the ball right here. One of the harder things about this pitch is that I have to train the finger pressure. Okay. So you don't want to, having a fair amount of pressure on the middle finger is great, but having a ton of pressure on this pointer finger is going to kill that overall movement that you're looking for. So one of the things I've been doing in catch play is I'll actually go back to gripping this entire seam, but I keep this finger off the ball. And that was one of the things that I talked to Walker Buehler about, was he throws all of his bullpens with this finger off the ball, and then when he goes into the game, he sets the finger on. Okay, so it teaches that that finger pressure that you're looking for while not really affecting the overall shape of the pitch.
And then is your thought on this? right? You're still trying to throw that. I know different, there's different methodologies. A lot of people just try to throw it just like a four seam, essentially same slot, same intent, just come at it and then let that. Essentially, what happens, as you said, there's no index finger pressure, and as you come through, your natural motion is just going to rip down, get the top spin, get it to move, right?
Yes, 100%. All I'm trying to do with this is create as much top spin as I can. And one of the things I noticed in trying to throw this pitch harder and harder was that I was actually developing spin rate on it. And there was nothing in the weight room that I was trying to do with it. There was a ton of studies about developing finger pressure developing spin rate through overall finger strength. There's a ton of stuff on that, but that's actually not what happened here. It was just the overall development of the pitch. And then I think sliding this finger down to where I'm only leveraging the same with just the finger pad actually ticked up the spin rate. I had never thrown a curveball really above 2,300, which is pretty low. And then in the middle of the season, I just, even without like any help, whether it be sunscreen rosin, a little bit of tack, just kind of varied. Even without that, I mean, I was still spinning them 25 to 27, which was really encouraging.
Nice. And speaking of which, have you gotten a chance? They have the new baseballs out there, the pre-tacked balls.
Yeah.
Have you guys been able to use those?
Yeah,
I've heard,
I don't know that I really.
Various people. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't know that there's really that much of a difference. If I'm being entirely honest with you, for me, if I'm being entirely honest, I think that there's a great sponsorship opportunity. You already have that bag of rosin on the back of the mound. If you were to create like a little bit like a standardized compartment on the back of the mound that held your little bottle of Banana Boat sunscreen and the rosin bag, I think there's a perfect opportunity for that. And there's enough data out there to show that the overall spin rate increase by using sunscreen rosin isn't enough that's going to drastically change the shape of the pitch. But I do think it's necessary to have something so that we're not death gripping the baseball to throw it as hard as we can and to have some sort of command of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's numerous reasons. First of all, like I know Tyler Glass now believes that some of that may have led to his injury, but I think there's also something to be said for as hard as you guys are throwing. Hey, if there's something that can help you command that thing a little bit better and keep that out of somebody's face, I think whatever we can do to keep hitters safe at the same time, not a bad thing. But I know I don't want to keep it for too much longer, but I wanted to before and there might, if something else comes up, great. But I wanted to share this because I thought it was really cool, right? I mentioned that game that we went to, and it was, I got a chance to meet your parents there, which was cool. And it was funny because I heard my name and I'm like, oh, it's somebody who's a fan of mine. That's cool. Like I don't have that happen very often. But it ended up actually being your mom. I guess she's a fan of mine, I suppose. But I talked to her for a little bit, and then your dad came down and sat by me for a little bit, and he said one of the coolest things, right? Because I was there with my family and I had my son there as well, and there were some of these things, and we're just kind of talking about like being dad and all this, and one of the neatest things. And again, they're watching their son pitch, and he didn't come down until after you were done pitching, right? Like I'm sure he probably was a little bit.
Won't.
Yeah,
nope.
He was a little too much anxiety there. But no, it's cool. And then he came down. But one of the neat things, and this is so cool because he said, I've read the stuff you guys have put out and heard the things you've said about Max, and I've seen other stuff. He said, what makes me really proud is that I know that obviously he's doing a good job. Proud of the way that you were carrying yourself and obviously the way that we had that other people were portraying you and talking about you in such a positive manner and the things you were doing. He was proud of that, I think, even more so than what you were doing on the mound. And he said, as a dad, that lets me know that I did a good job. And I thought that was one of the coolest things to be able to sit there and just I thought that was really neat because I was like, man, I hope one day I can look back at my own son, whatever he ends up doing, probably playing video games or something. I don't know, but to know that, but that was really cool. And I was like, this is a neat, that was just, the overall experience was so cool. But to be able to hear that and to know, so I hope he doesn't mind me sharing that. It's too late now.
No, I'm sure he'll love it. I'm sure he'll love it.
But
I actually commend him. I'm sorry. I actually commend
go
him
ahead.
quite a bit because he was like, I think he was a little apprehensive to the whole brand building idea at first, or the
Mhm.
personal brand building. He's a very like kind of, move. Oh my God, speak softly and carry a big stick. He was kind of that. He's kind of that guy. He's very not a social media, not a pro social media kind of guy. But I think as he's seen the overall direction of what I'm trying to do, in trying to promote my teammates and make sure that this thing doesn't become all about me, even though it is my personal brand. I think he's become a lot more open to it. And I think he is actually. I genuinely think he enjoys what I'm doing, and that's kind of a cool shift for me to see, and seeing that he's willing to kind of adjust to be open to new stuff. So, Dad, I know you're listening. Thank you. I appreciate you.
So I know, and this is maybe the last thing I'll hit on, and we'll let you go. But you talked about the brand building, right? I'm representing the brand here. We got the t-shirts. I know you got the podcast, but what spurred you guys to do that? Because I know, I've seen you did a lot of the videos and showing some of your training and talking about, hey, it's assignment day and kind of going through and showing like, here's what I'm making here's my meal for today. Here's my workout. Here's my schedule. Like, what was the genesis of that? Like, what pushed you to do it when you started that? Because at the time, for all intents and purposes, outside of a few of us, you're a completely unknown commodity to a large majority of even Cubs fans, right? And I'm just undrafted, signed out of indie ball, right? And it's like, at least initially, like, okay, kind of a big dude, cool name. But so to start that up, like before you were a known commodity, is that's kind of wild, man. What
It was cool.
What started that? What was behind it?
So there are three parts to this answer. The first being the people I was around on a daily basis. I was very fortunate living in Arizona to be I kind of lucked into this whole thing. I was training with amazing dudes: Phil Deal, Logan Shore, Rio Gomez, Brooks Kriske, just all these guys who had minor league time and just had amazing stories. And then you're working for a guy like Luke Haggerty. You have Eric Sim and Dean Jackson coming into the gym every day. You're going to do live at bats at Trevor Bauer's facility. You have all these things that, dude, if I knew that there were guys out there doing this when I was in college, again, I would have loved to have seen it. Right. So it gave me kind of a platform or I shouldn't say a platform. It kind of opened up that opportunity to do something like this. And I was very fortunate to have Aiden McIntyre and Eric Sim, who had a ton of experience in building their own brand. So they kind of gave me editing tips. They kind of gave me overall direction, help with it. It was dumb stuff like, what meme could I use here? Right. So, having those guys around me really made this a possibility, because I don't know that I have that same intuition going into it that I have without that. I don't know that I have that without them. So, having those guys was absolutely key in this whole thing getting off the ground. Second, I wanted to build a reasonable image of who I was. I was very tired of posting only the good on Twitter. That was something that even now it makes me cringe. And one of the big examples, I posted this video. I want to say it was like 2 or 3 weeks left of the season, and it's just like a minute 40 of me K'ing up dudes. And I'm like I posted it, and I was like, this is cool, but like it's not really what happened, right? And yeah, sure, you get some ugly swings, you show some good, you show some good life on every pitch, but it kind of sat with me, and I'm like, that's not who I am, and that's not really what I want to broadcast, is only the good. Because the biggest pet peeve of mine is when I will definitely not name names, but one of the biggest pet peeves of mine is when guys will go to like their Instagram story and they'll post one pitch, and I'm like, that's just like, that's sick, but like that's not what's happening, right? That's the best one out of this brand new pitch that you're developing. I'm sure there's a ton of misfires, right? So that was that video of me K'ing up dudes inspired the one where I posted me just giving up a ton of tanks. So I was like, you know what? We all get God at some point. Like that, it's fine. Like it happens. Obviously, you want it to happen less, but to be able to live with it and accept it I think that's cool. I think it's different. I don't know that I've seen very many guys have that complete opposite end of the spectrum
No.
in terms of what they're willing to put out there, So I wanted to build a very reasonable image of who I was. And that, I mean, even back in March, it was like, okay, I'm going to show this live AB day where I'm 93 and 95 instead of 96 to 98, because those days are going to happen, and they happen throughout the season. I have starts where my average velo's, 90 in the low 93s. And then I have some where my average velo's in the high 94s. So like, you're going to have those ups and downs. So I think building that reasonable image of who you are, is completely paramount in terms of like who you are to everybody else. Cause I want them to know the person just as much as they know the player. And I'll say lastly, in being around so many amazing people, I wanted to make, and I've said this before here, but I wanted to make the content about them. And first it started with me just being like, look at all these dudes I'm training with. But then especially going into this offseason where I had, where I chose to move back to Michigan to support my girlfriend in her teaching career. And I'm completely good with that decision. But, and having that happen, I was like, okay, I could put videos out. I could put 8-minute videos of me training out, but like, who just wants to watch me for 8 minutes? Like, I'm not what made the content go. And that was what kind of started the podcast. Was it gave me a way to make the majority of the content about other guys that I had been with and who I know had special stories, good characteristics about them. Like, I think that the content we've put out, and it's something I get to keep when I'm done too, right? The content that we've put out with the people that we've had on, man, it just makes it go. It's not me. Sure, it's under my brand, but it's not me. I don't care. I'm sure I add a small portion to it, and I add a little bit of relatability and that just included vulnerability with each guest that comes on. But man, the guys that we interview, they make the content go. That, nobody's tuning into my podcast to hear me talk for 8 minutes and then interview or then, ask questions. They're tuning in to hear Jordan Wicks. They're tuning in to hear Aiden McIntyre and Rio Gomez. They're tuning in to hear Rob Hill. So having those guys on made the content go. And I'm ultimately really happy that I made the decision I did, because I just have all this content that I get to keep when I'm done with all these special and amazing people. So, in a very long answer, that's why I started to do it.
No, that's incredible. That's, the other, and obviously I didn't want to cut you off, but the other thing I was thinking when you talked about, showing those videos is like, all right, if you're some dude who just all you show is the good and you're showing nasty pitch, and then somebody just drops a nuke on you the next time you throw it, versus, hey man, I'm showing you the growth. I'm going to show you all these nukes that got hit off of me, but look where that got me. And that it's the negative. It's not the negative, but it's how do we take those negatives and reframe them and learn from them. And now look where I've gotten to, because if you only show the good, boy, it gets real frustrating.
It's ugly, man. It can get ugly too. So I think building that very real image of who you are is really important in all this. So, yeah, man, I've really enjoyed it, and it's something I plan to continue doing. And I don't ever want it to be something that's looked at as like, oh, look at me, look what I'm doing, and look how loud this guy is. I don't want it to be about that. It's not about, it's not about me. It's about everybody else, and I will stick to that until the day I'm done with this whole thing. So, yeah, man, there's really not much more I can add to it.
A lot of kids can learn from that, man. It's like a process of being socially honest on social media versus socially. I think it's dishonest, to be honest. A lot of what people post these days, is just like the best of it. It's like the best moment from a family trip where, you didn't see them arguing and about ready to kill each other 5 minutes earlier.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nobody wants to see the drive, Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot. You can get into my whole social development and how I would have been entirely insecure up until this last year to post anything bad about myself, But now that I'm really happy with who I am as a person, I don't care, because like this stuff happens to everybody, or everybody that's within the game, and really in real life too. It's just a different variation. So, if people have a problem with it, then oh well, I don't really care. I'm doing this my way, and I have a good vision for it. I think, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Nice.
Well, I for one, and I think I speak for a lot of folks, I certainly hope that whether it's the content creation or obviously the reason behind it for right now, the fact that you are pitching in professional baseball, you're a part of the Cubs organization. I hope those things continue for as long as possible, and certainly You continue to get a smaller and smaller number next to your name when they're coming out with these new rankings. That we see that we see you moving up through. And I think, again, that's part of it as well. Is I think it's been cool how you show the grind of it. I think there's a lot of glamour that can go on, and it's like, and you see, actually, that's one thing. And I keep rambling with stuff, but there's like all these awesome facilities that are out there. And I envy people who have those. But it's like my son's, the facility we use for their travel organization is called the Smokehouse. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. It's got like remaindered football field turf. So it smells like, a shoe. And when you leave, you got like little pellets in your shoes.
Love that shoe smell.
And it's like when we got there on Sunday, like the director was like, "Oh, I left the heat on this time." Like the box is falling off the radiator, the thermostat thing, and there's a deal up there. And it's like you're cramped in there, and it's either too hot or too cold. But damn it, like you got done, and like one of the kids was like, "I like this better than the other place," because like you're out there in the middle. It's like Rocky going to train against Drago. It's like you don't have anything else to do but bust your ass. Like just go.
Yes.
So
there's a certain component of that, man. There is a certain component of the grittiness that absolutely helps. So, and I don't mean to like cut out here early. I got about 3% of my laptop. I decided to charge my phone during this, and apparently I went from 100 to 5% in about 45 minutes. So I've been watching my battery.
No, that's
for
smart.
The last
that's
15
thinking.
Minutes. So
it's a good way to get off the show.
Apologize. I do gotta run.
That's what you should have done that. You should have pulled that like 30 minutes ago. That's what most of it is.
No. I love being here. I want to thank you guys for having me on. This has been a blast. It always is. Evan, I appreciate you wearing the shirt. You're gonna have to wear that every time you come to see me play, because I know you wore that when you came to see me play against Wisconsin. So that has to stay the same now. John, it's always good to see you. I appreciate you guys having me on. Always have fun here. And thank you guys, man. Let's stay in touch as always. And man, I always want to come back on. So thank you,
much
guys.
success to you, man.
Thank you very much.
Look forward
guys.
to watching you.
Sounds good.
Right,
yes, sir. Talk soon.
So Evan, where can we get the Max Bain gear? I was trying to find it out there. Is it available online? Evan, are you there?
Great Lakes Baseball? Is it Great Lakes Bat Company? I'm probably behind. Are you picking me up again? I don't know.
I got you. I
cut out and then I'm back.
Great Lakes Bat Company.
Yeah, I think it's Great Lakes Bat Company, I believe.
There we go.
Because we should pull that up and put it on the.
Yeah, for sure. We can throw this. Here it is. I'll just throw it in the comments section so that if people can check it out. If you guys want to see it, Red, White, and Bain. I love it. I love the. There's the link to Great Lakes Bat Company, and this is where they sell his apparel.
Should be, unless it's changed. I know that's where I bought this shirt. But I don't know if it's if things have changed or if we've got some stuff we can pull it up from his. I should have probably figured that out at the time before
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it all out.
Yeah, but this is no, it's like he's such a good dude.
Yeah, he is.
And I really appreciate the thoughtful responses. You know what I mean? And really, like, you could tell, like, this is a dude who has done his work. I mean, the whole, just everything about the way he goes about his business, pitching and working out, all those. And I think what's cool is he's not a guy who it came to easily, right? Again, really not many offers out of high school, undrafted out of college, spent a year in indie ball, signed as an undrafted free agent, and really had to bust his ass and figure out new things. And I think that's a test, because so many times, right, we see this in whether it be travel ball even or high school or college, and you see these phenoms and you hear about all these people, but when we were talking about thousands and thousands of baseball players, not every one of them is going to be the greatest player on their team and on the cover of Sports Illustrated like Bryce Harper when they're in high school. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to see those guys who have to grind it out. And it's cool because I just appreciate the honesty that he brings and how genuine he is about that stuff, right? Just, like he said, I'm gonna put a video of me giving up all these tanks through the year. Like, who does that? Nobody does that. but
It's
that's
it's cool to
that's
be able to
real.
have fun with that stuff. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, you're right. I mean, when we see it, I mean, anybody who's involved in baseball knows the failures that come along with it, man. There are many. And so to act for a moment like they don't exist is just disingenuous, and he's just not willing to go there. And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's I was looking this up, so I actually got the link, I think, for the shirts here. I was trying to see where this was. It's on like tchip.com, but if you search Max Bain shirts, you can find them. But yeah, super good dude. Always love, and we've gotten to know each other, and so I really, really enjoy his insight because he's just as thoughtful about that. Like, I've reached out to him just about stuff with my son, or just different, I mean, we've gone back and forth on different topics in baseball, all the way back, to the I'm trying to remember who it was who, stole the strategy card from the catcher in the game. And there's other, the Mets stuff, and I'll just like bounce ideas off him because I know that he's going to provide a thoughtful response. So really, really enjoyed having him on, especially following up on Ethan Roberts last week. And so they both have kind of a similar approach to, very, very different individuals, but really cool stuff. So I'm glad we gotten back to the interviews, and I've got to follow back up. We're banking on getting Scott Efros on here here in the next couple weeks. Russ Dorsey is going to be joining us at some point in the next few weeks. I gotta nail that down. He was one of the few. We got most of the beat writers on, and I'm really interested because I love his, and Russ is probably like the most honest, like during a Bears game, like he's tweeting through it just like any other Bears fan. So I love
like
the
he's
fact
a fan.
that, like, when it's not the Cubs beat, right? He's not that you can't be honest on the beat, but he can't be a fan, right? You don't fan or root against or really go full, but he brings some cool perspective to it, and I'm very interested just to kind of talk with him. So I hope everybody out there enjoys these interviews, and certainly the different time frame. But I will say, man, I was gonna, he's talking about getting on there. My son got off the mound for the first time today in about 2 months. We've been just sticking to flat ground and different side work, taking the break after the season and everything. But got back on the mound for a bullpen tonight, and that was kind of fun because it's exactly what he said, man. When you're getting back out there trying to throw those pitches, it's like, hey, I could go in there and take video of like the really good curveballs he was throwing through the one session, or I could show you a couple of them that he tanked off the top of the backstop back there because he just didn't have the grip, and it was a different feel, and that's realistic. Like, you watch these kids going through it, and I think that's important for them, though. Someone like Max kind of providing a good look at it, because, dude, it can be really tough if you're a kid and all especially with social media being what it is, if all you see is success and these nasty, like, I love Pitching Ninja, but if that's all you look at is Pitching Ninja and go, holy crap, look at that, that's so nasty, I can't do that, it's like that can actually almost be detrimental. Some kids might look at it and be like, I want to try to do that, but this is like, wait a minute, I can't throw a pitch like that, why am I even trying? So we'll see. But
exactly.
hopefully things keep on going well, man. I'm really excited about the one. I guess it's a good thing, but the lockout's going on, man. Major leaguers can't do anything, but it's badass. There's like 75 or 100 minor league guys.
I know, that's crazy. I couldn't believe he said that.
Busting their asses, getting better.
It's incredible.
Yeah, but it's like they're not locked out, so they can do whatever the hell they want. It's great.
And they're down there at the facility, and it's cool to see. It's got to be interesting for those guys just to have that type of access to the facility, right? Without having to worry about any of the pros around. Not that they normally would be this time of year anyway. So, anyways, I'm not sure if we've lost Evan. I think, are you back, Evan?
Yeah.
We got a late night, everyone using their internet. We usually do this during the day. So it's got the kids on their computers.
The problem is that
streaming things.
Yeah. Everybody's sucking off the Wi-Fi right now. That sounded like a Nancy Reagan.
Sucking off the Wi-Fi. That'll be the, that should be our logo, our quote. or whatever, sucking off the Wi-Fi. Okay. Anyways, I think
Throw it on there.
on that note, we should probably go. But we'll be back. We'll be back later this week to talk about what's going on with the Cubs, which is absolutely nothing. But we'll make some stuff up. So don't worry about that. Until then,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the interview. See ya.